First off, I want to thank the brave men and women who work behind the wall. I want to thank them on a national level because their job goes unrecognized.
How do they try to turn a guard?
Well, Correctional Officer. Sorry, I apologize. But Correctional Officer. How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, in case you don't know, hopefully you guys do follow the news and you are aware of these situations. We had an officer that was taken from us on May 1st, 2021. It was an ambush. He was in his car. Looks like someone shot into the vehicle, taking the officer's life. In the newspaper article, they believe that this was either gang-related or could have been a mistaken identity. But either way, this is a topic worth exploring because it shows how the dangers of the job, what we do behind the wall, can connect to the streets. Connie, what's the gentleman's name again?
His name is Bikramdeep Randhawa.
Right. And I know we kind of skimmed through the article, but basically the Delta chief believed that this could either be mistaken identity or it could be just kind of like the dangers of the job, a gang hit, correct?
Yes. So it says specifically, investigators are still working to determine a motive, including whether the killing was a case of mistaken identity or potentially related to his job.
Right. So now, because there's still information, being discovered along the way right now, we don't have all the information in front of us. We're going to cover this in a very general manner, just to show you, the dangers, how what we do behind the wall can affect, what happens to us on the streets. I mean, I know Russ, who's been on the show before, has had a hit on him. Actually, I know a few officers that have been greenlit. So I think this is a very worthy discussion. I think this is a discussion that, if you're from the outside looking in, you need to hear. This is very important because this is why I mentioned that the work we do, those brave men and women that work in correction, those correctional officers, this is law enforcement work because they're putting themselves at risk every day. And it's not just behind the wall. These inmates are going to know who these officers are. They deal with these officers every day. So again, it's just a risk, especially when you're out there doing your job and, being effective. So we have a little bit to discuss today. I'm looking forward to this dialogue. Connie, do you mind introducing yourself again to our audience?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Connie Alleyne here. I am the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy. I'm also the podcast host of The Fly Behind the Wall and the author of The Cage Was Her Cocoon.
All right. And guys, if you haven't, make sure you subscribe to this channel. We're going to go to a sponsor real quick. When we come back, we're going to talk about the dangers of this profession and how that can carry out into the real world. Stand by.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it. It's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
All right, and we're back. So first off, I don't know specifically a lot about this case because it's ongoing. They're trying to discover. So this is just a general discussion. Not all of it is going to apply to what just happened. But this is kind of what starts the dialogue, because when a lot of us in corrections read what happened to this fallen hero, they automatically connected the dangers of their work to what could happen, because we know this is realistic. We know that the work we do behind the wall can pose a threat to us on the outside, because what are we doing, guys, every day? We're stopping these inmates from doing what they want to do. And in some cases, it could be running their business. It could be, stopping them from getting that hit off. And these inmates still have connections to the outside world. That means that if we're onto something and there's a chance we can stop them from doing something that must be done, they can take measures into their own hands by making some phone calls. And next thing you know, you think you're good on the outside, and all of a sudden you're getting ambushed. Now, Connie, obviously it's hard to monitor these inmates every day, the phone calls that they're making, the access that they have to the public through mail, through JPay and kiosk. I mean, thank God we have good investigators that, should know which inmates they should target. But having said that, when these inmates are being targeted, they're not the ones that are sending out that message. They'll have a weaker inmate probably send out that message, someone that they can manipulate into doing so, or someone that's loyal to them, and maybe a gang culture like we just talked about before. It could be a possible gang hit. But when you saw this, did this make you automatically think, man, the dangers of the work we do?
Absolutely. So the first thing I thought was there somebody he pissed off at work, right? Was there some inmate he got in the mix of something with that now, put a hit out on him? I think immediately I thought about just what exactly, like, so I kind of can receive that piece of mistaken identity, but I don't know. I think there's too much of an alignment with the fact that he has a role in law enforcement, and this just so happened to be some sort of, possible gang related activity. Looking at this, you really just think about, throughout the course of our day, we're doing our jobs, and we just don't know what we could be sort of coming in between, right? What transactions we've interrupted. I think about just the simple things, right? Like, I remember there being a nurse who, she had a pencil, like her son was, an honor student at wherever, and, inmate got a hold to it. There was like all this stuff that happened, and ultimately her on the outside became a target. Like, they wanted her to start doing things that would have put herself and her family in jeopardy. But I feel like these are the dangers of our job, that we work in this environment where, at any given point, we can become a target. At any given point, if we decide that we are not going to be a part of whatever this inmate operation is internally, that we could be the next one, so absolutely. I thought this had something to do with his work.
And I think so did a lot of people that are from this profession that were reading this and discovering what had happened. Guys, the moment you say no, the moment you seize that concept, moment you present an obstacle to what they're trying to accomplish, is the moment that you put yourself at risk. But it's part of the job. It's the inherent risk. And a lot of us may sit and only focus on the dangers behind the wall, and we may get a little complacent on the outside. But now this goes back into that discussion we had a while back about that hypervigilance. Why, unfortunately, we have to kind of take that outside the wall and, have that hypervigilance with us all the time, because, these inmates are still connected. At any point, I piss off this inmate, I don't know who's going to come at me. I don't know if all of a sudden I'm hanging out, let's say at a mall, and people start staring at me, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? Like, because you don't know who it is that they're connected to. And at any moment, they of course know it's not that hard for them to get at you either, because all they have to do is make a simple phone call and say, hey, this officer's scheduled from 2 to 10. So they leave work at 10 o'clock, just follow them home. Because they know where we're at, and they know when our shift ends. So all they got to do is make the right phone call, and the next thing you know, you got people following us out of the parking lot all the way to our house. And that's happened before, guys. I'm sure there's people here that can share stories like that, where, you think you're safe and you're getting out of your car, and all of a sudden, here comes the car that's been following you the whole time, and they start taking some shots at you, right when you're at the front doorstep, putting your whole family at risk. So, that, again, Connie.
One thing I wanted to add to that is that because we're civil servants, our information is public, and so we aren't as protected as we would like to feel we are, simply because we are civil servants, whether you're a state employee or city employee, in that space where, anyone can gain access to your information. I know that's, part of using last names only so that, people can't look you up and try to find you. But our reality is that we are vulnerable because we are civil servants.
Yeah, and I want to add something else too, guys. Be careful of people that you tell your routine to. You're sitting there maybe telling your routine to an officer you think you can trust, or loud enough where inmates can hear it, or maybe you're dumb enough to tell an inmate, the routine. No, this has to be aggressively taught because this is our lives. I didn't mean to be as aggressive with it, but this has to be aggressively said because literally you should be telling your inmate those routines. If they find out that every morning you go to breakfast at this location, and sometimes, you know what? You never know how they can discover it. You don't know, maybe for some reason in some facilities, maybe you're allowed to have a bag lunch with you or whatever. So they see the same store that you go to every morning to get that lunch. You know what I mean? Now they know exactly where you're going to be right before you go to work, and they kind of know the time frame. Well, this person gets on their post around this time. So, we're assuming within this hour, they're at this location. I mean, it's really not that hard for people to figure out those routines because we don't realize that we may give out hints to those routines. And guys, inmates, they're observant. They're looking at they're looking for these hints so they can understand that routine. And God forbid they do order that green light. There's so much info that they can get from your daily routine or from you just leaving work that, literally they could become successful at taking you out. And that's where, to be honest with you, we have to take those threats real. If an inmate tells you that, threatens you in a way like, hey, I'm going to get you, or my boys are going to get you, whatever it is, you need to report that immediately. Don't sit there and dismiss it. Don't play macho. Don't do any of that. Report that to the investigators, who it's their job then to determine if this threat is credible. And if you're an investigator, and you find out that this threat is real, or you find out that this officer was threatened, then you need to get on that inmate's phones, get on their email, their JPay access, all that stuff to see if this person is going to carry out on that. And guys, don't just stop after day one it's been reported. This person should continue to go on that list. And then you should also talk to the officer to see if they have any concern about continuing to work on that post, because that's another issue too, and a lot of officers like, well, that's not going to bother me, that threat. Yeah, guys, but you got to think about it, because now the threat isn't just about you behind the wall. The threat can be taken to you and your family. And for those officers that are good at what they do, you're going to probably get threatened a lot because you're good at what you do. You're an obstacle to whatever it is that they're trying to get done. So you need to take those threats seriously, because at any moment, those threats could be taken to the outside, because God forbid this officer was with his family, was with his kids. I don't know if he had kids. You know what I mean? But all I'm saying is it carries out to the outside. So your actions, and if there's a chance that there is a threat on your life, you need to exhaust all efforts to minimize that threat, and definitely reporting it to all the proper sources and holding them responsible to it. Following up, doing whatever you can to make sure that, hey, do I got to do anything with my family? How credible is this threat? Even if it means, I'm sorry, in the meantime, cutting the inmate's phone off, stopping them from sending out letters. You made a threat. Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to check everything you've done so far. But now no phone access, no emails, no JPays. Cut them from the outside world. Because if that threat gets carried out, and the other thing is that I would actually obviously put them in some form of administrative housing, because they could still have influence on the other inmates. So they're not just cut off from access on the outside. They're going to be immediately cut off from access on the inside. So guys, as I'm developing the dialogue, what I'm thinking right now is the moment you're threatened like that, obviously you call for a supervisor immediately. And then what they do is that inmate needs to be separated from anything that they can influence. That's the key. And that needs to be done immediately. What's your thoughts on that, Connie? Would you agree with that?
No, I absolutely agree. I mean, I think that we definitely have to take these threats seriously. And, I didn't know that we could actually stop them from, now I knew that we could stop the phone. I wasn't sure that we could stop them from writing, but it makes all the sense in the world that, immediately cease any connections to the outside world. And then even the disconnection from them being able to, if they can't carry something out, they can still influence another inmate to carry out whatever it is that they were looking for. Or they could then have other inmates contact folks on the outside since the heat is on them. And so I think literally taking them out of circulation is really important. I think, we don't, the purpose of this, I think, discussion is not to, push people into this state of fear, but to really raise the awareness so that we respond quickly to these things and that we do take them seriously, because nobody wants to be that person who's now getting shot outside of a mall, right? It's a Saturday, who's no longer going home to their family. Whatever that outcome is, like, nobody wants that. So for me, I absolutely agree that we have to be aggressive in the way that we address these issues, and that we have to always take them seriously until we know that the threat is neutralized.
Yeah, and by the way, the inmate can still write complaints to the facility. They can always have paper remedies or grievances, but that paper is only going from, one spot to the admin. It's not going through multiple channels. It's very controlled. But when you have an inmate that has made that threat, yes, I feel all contact with the outside world and the inside world, it must be slowed down, if not halted, because you need to be able to control that possible threat, and the investigators should be all about that, and if the lawyers are calling for that inmate, then you lean on the charge. I'm sorry, this inmate's being charged for a threat, and until we can discover the validity of the threat, these are the steps that we have to take, but this is, what's funny, Connie, and hopefully people in higher management are listening to this. This is what will motivate officers to also be more effective in the job that they do. Because if they feel that, if I go after these things, I could be threatened both inside this facility and now outside, am I being protected? And when they see that we have a zero tolerance for a threat, and I'm talking about a zero tolerance, run the gamut, then eventually you're going to probably have officers that are going to be more motivated because they see that administration and the investigative authorities are doing what they can to make sure that that officer or that person, doing their job is, okay. It can be effective. So there has to be some level of zero tolerance for any threat, no matter how superficial. No matter how superficial. If the inmate says something, however aggressive, and tries to say, well, that's not what I meant by that, I'm sorry, we're still going to run the gamut. I meant that I would take care of him by calling my lawyer. Sorry, we're still going to go ahead and run the gamut, because they'll do that. They'll say, oh, I'll take care of you. And then when they go through the hearing, the hearing officer may say, well, you know what? They didn't really threaten. They meant that they were going to call their lawyer. Nope. Too bad. They're not doing that. The point is, the person said, I'll take care of him. And universally, we take that as a threat. I don't care what they say afterwards, because in the end of the day, they should have never said it that way. What they could have said was something, hey, be straightforward. I'll call my lawyer then. That's fine. You want to do that? I'm not going to charge you for that. Fine. But when you say, I'll take care of you, I don't care if you meant that you're going to call your lawyer or call your family or get the supervisor on me. And the point is, that's becoming a threat to me. And I expect that universal precaution. I expect for me to call it in, get the supervisor involved. And at that moment, we seize all communication that that inmate could possibly have to remind that inmate, one, we're in control of this house. But number two is let that inmate know we're on to you. Most of the time when they think that they can make this threat and they feel that they can make the threat and be far removed from the outcome, so basically I'll make this threat, but you know what? They'll never figure out it's me. Not going to happen, because now once we get the investigators on, the investigators can easily say, I'm going to tell you something. If something happens to this officer, because they do, if something happens to us, whatever it is, you're being held responsible. We're coming for you. And then hopefully those investigators could forward that up to the prosecutor, who'd be willing to accept that as credible evidence. Because most likely when you start putting it back on those people, those leaders who are making the hits, but now they can't be far removed from it, usually there's a good chance it may not be carried out, because you're going to hold them responsible. But the key is, as like you said, Connie, that immediate reaction, the saving of that person's life depends on that immediate reaction, both from the individual that gets the threat, but also from the people who are now in a position to help deal with that threat. It's a great dialogue. Now, guys, there's other concerns that I would hope is unrelated to what just happened, but I do want to discuss it. But by the way, guys, this is not connected to this young hero. This is just another avenue I want to take just because, again, it could happen. Corrupt officers. If you have someone that's corrupt, I'm not saying that's the case. I just want to put it out there. We covered the dialogue. Your actions could also affect your family. The moment you stop doing it, the moment you fail to do something, all those actions could then carry its way out into the real world where now you're not working for us anymore. You're working for them. And just like any other one of their, gang members or subordinates, the punishments that they would go through, you're no different. So the moment you fail to do what's expected, the moment you make that bad choice to enter that world, you're not just putting yourself at risk. You're putting everyone you love at risk. Because one thing in prison is the choices that you make are never just your own. Connie, what's your thoughts on that?
They are never just your own. So, I guess we do have to talk to the negative side of things, right? I think we try to keep it positive up front. But the reality is that, once you start dealing with the inmates and you start complying or cooperating or whatever word you want to use for it, the reality is that you're on that cycle, right? Like it's hard for you to get out of that. And whatever decision you make to engage in any dealings with an inmate, you have to understand that ultimately not only are you paying and your family paying, but you're also jeopardizing the facility, you're jeopardizing the institution, you're jeopardizing your brothers and sisters behind the wall. Like it's just a snowball of things that are happening. I would hope that this is not the situation with this officer. People can draw as many conclusions as they want to. We don't know all the details and we wouldn't be able to draw any real conclusion about what happened or why it happened, right? But just understanding that, it's almost that saying like no good deed goes unnoticed, right? So it's like when we're behind the wall and we start getting caught up in stuff, like that stuff doesn't go unnoticed or it doesn't go unchecked, not for long, right? And so, I just ask you guys just to be safe out there and really just not get caught up. There's no other way to say that. You're there, you're the professional, integrity is the expectation, professionalism is the expectation. Even if you found yourself getting manipulated, there's ways for you to come forward because that's actually the best way for you to handle it, right? You need to come forward and say, listen, I don't even know how I got caught up in this thing, whatever the thing is, right? Like the last thing you want is the inmate to constantly have something to be held over your head and you to get constantly compromised and it's almost like you're digging deeper and there's no way to get out,
Yeah, and guys, I love that, Connie. You're right. We had it covered because, someone's going to mention it or someone's going to think it. But I guess ultimately the same response I would want on a threat for an officer is kind of like the same response you would get for a threat for a political figure or a judge. Because I guarantee if those inmates made a threat on a judge or a political figure, everything would be locked down. They would go the whole gamut. I want the same thing for our staff who are the ones that are out there risking their lives. Hey, Connie, have anything you'd like to say in closing?
I would just like to say, listen, we need to take this stuff really seriously. And, I think our response, I think, really sends a message, not just to the inmates, but also to our staff. The message that we send to our staff is that we support them and that we want to make sure that they're safe, their safety matters. But it also sends a message that we are going to investigate everything that comes forward. So you need to be operating at the highest level of integrity at all times. I think, yes, sending the message to the inmate, but I think it is important that we are aggressive and that we do take quick action when these type of issues come up, because it clearly could be a matter of life or death.
Right. And guys, this is why we don't want cell phones behind that wall, because we need those communications monitored at all times. I should have mentioned that earlier in the episode, but that kind of goes without saying. We don't want cell phones. I know there's a lot of people in the public that feel inmates should have cell phones, guys. This is one of the reasons why you don't want that, because they could still conduct their business. Now, on another note, guys, just as we said, guys, hypervigilance, Your actions behind the wall obviously do matter. Check out those routines. See if you're giving out any hints to your daily routines during your routine rounds or whatever it is. I'm very curious because I know sometimes we're guilty of it, including where we go to eat. Something that's simple.
That
the
cup of coffee.
When we leave. What is it, Connie?
I said that cup of coffee you come in with every morning from Starbucks.
There it is.
Dunkin' Donuts.
You know, it's all, especially when you work at those county jails, where some of these inmates will probably even know you. You know, because it's a smaller setting. I'm sure it happens in the state as well, but I think the county is going to get it a lot more because it's more immediate. But definitely a very good dialogue. Curious to see what your thoughts are. But again, this is why we need to get elevated to that law enforcement status nationally, because this is the risk we have, not just behind the wall, but when you're doing your job effectively behind that wall, you're going to have a risk also on the outside. Because if you stop gang activity behind the wall, there's a good chance you're stopping gang activity on the streets. People don't see that. The work we do behind the wall truly does make it safer on the streets, because we're involved with a lot of the gang activity that could manifest its way out. So again, we become that obstacle. We get the risk. As always, guys, your show's checked up. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.